This is Fountain
Every
Street
week I find
Church.
it hard to find the best ones, but somehow, like I said, you'll hear what I'm trying to say even when the words
Here,
are
we strive to free the mind, grow the soul, and change the world. Here, there is freedom to doubt and freedom to believe. Here, you can find a house of prayer for all people.
the swallow up Jonah.
Welcome to Fountain Street Church. Join us on the journey.
The greatest of these is love. An ancient thought. Greater, why? Why is love greater than faith or hope and perhaps even joy? Love is greatest because it is what esteems things. What matters is what we love. If we do not love it, it does not matter. Faith is of trivial matters if you do not love your faith. Hope is of no value if you do not treasure your hope. Joy is of passing pleasure unless you throw yourself into it as into the arms of your beloved. So love, yes, indeed, is the greatest, for without it, everything else fails. The candle of love will now be lit by Auden Chase. It's fine.
May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and redeemer. Amen. You've heard the old expression, love makes the world go round. I was curious about where it came from and learned that it is of Latin origin and first appeared in English in the 16th century. Singers and songwriters have used it in more recent times, mostly in reference to romantic love. This is not the impartial love Buddhists try to generate in their Dharma practice, but is sexualized love, which from a Buddhist perspective is primary attachment. The scientific literalist might argue, well, I always thought that forces such as gravity and momentum were responsible for keeping the Earth in orbit around the sun and spinning on its axis, and that wouldn't be wrong. There are many challenges to the notion that love makes the world go round. Chief among them is the fact that this old expression has never been true. It certainly wasn't true back in Jesus' day when the Roman Empire was encircling and enslaving ever more peoples and their cultures in an attempt to expand its own economic and ethnic base. It wasn't any truer when European Christendom decided to drive the, quote, infidels from the Holy Lands in the early medieval ages, barbarically destroying Ottoman art, literature, and culture, not to mention innocent civilians, all in the name of Christ. It wasn't love that brought explorers to North America a, quote, new land full of opportunities. For one of the first institutions to be hallowed on those shores was that of slavery for Native Americans, Africans, and poor whites. And explorers brought a gift that kept on giving, smallpox, that in places wiped out 80% of the local population, which in many cases never recovered. Throughout the centuries, it seems that greed and envy, hate and bitterness are what usually drive the course of world events. In the century just past, 2 world wars and a host of other slightly more localized conflicts set the tone for human life. Indeed, much of the economic well-being of the 20th century depended upon a thriving military-industrial complex. Love has never been the impetus behind government programs and policies. Occasionally, humanitarian concerns are addressed, but they are quickly and easily dropped when they become economically untenable or politically unpopular. If love makes the world go round rings more falsely in our ears today than ever before, it is still true that love makes the ride worthwhile. Love makes the ride worthwhile. It makes life worthwhile. Only love makes the seemingly endless go-round of hate and greed and injustice that motivate much of this world bearable. For it does, as the Apostle Paul suggests, clothe men and women in compassion. Both Paul and Jesus concluded that all 613 commandments of the Torah could be summed up in the practical performance of love. Both insisted that love is a verb with its meaning fully contained in action. Because love is something done, not said, it seems appropriate that this week's sermon should be a series of stories I have called Love in 3 Movements, each demonstrating how love takes its shape through the work of others. Love story number 1, The Happy Prince. First, consider one of Oscar Wilde's beautiful fairy tales, the Happy Prince. The prince in this story was nothing more than an exquisite statue, gilded all over with thin leaves of fine gold. He looked down on his city with priceless blue sapphire eyes and guarded his domain with a sword bejeweled with an enormous red ruby. From his tall column, the Happy Prince kept watch over his people. One night, a small swallow, lost on his yearly migration to the warm regions of Egypt, landed wearily at the prince's feet to rest. But before he could fall asleep, a cascade of water began to douse him. It was tears from the eyes of the prince. From his vantage point, the prince could see a sick child begging his mother for an orange, while the poor woman worked with bleeding fingers, embroidering a piece of fancy satin for a noble woman's ball gown. "Swallow, please stay with me tonight and be my messenger," begged the prince. "That boy is so thirsty and that mother so sad." The little bird agreed. Doing as the prince instructed, the bird took the fabulous ruby from its sword hilt and dropped it on the table next to the thimble of the woman.